discussion on that? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor of accepting the donation, please signify by saying aye and raising your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, very good. Scott, as board clerk, can you please write a thank you note to Union Mutual? Yes. Thank you for that. And lastly, we have the bid for the 2 replacement doors in Shaftesbury. Superintendent Culkeen, I'm not sure if you're able to speak to this.
Director of Finance and Operations, Renee Gordon, has just joined the meeting, and she was going to make herself available to speak to that.
Great, thank you.
Hey there, sorry I'm having some computer issues tonight, so I was a little delayed joining. So this is basically a continuation of the doors that we had replaced earlier in the spring, but just moved into the new fiscal year with our new budget, which we did plan to finish up these door replacements. So we had contacted the 3 vendors. 2 declined to submit a bid, so we ended up with only 1, Royal Group, and they're actually the company that did the other installations for us earlier. So it's actually kind of works in our favor because it's going to be, a continuation with the same company, and we're pleased with the work that they did. So again, it is in the FY22 budget, facilities budget, and we are looking for the board to award the bid to the Royal Group for $24,731.
Okay. So before we open this up to conversation and question, I think first it's proper. Can I have a motion to accept the bid as described by Director Gordon?
So moved.
Thank you. Can I have a second as well?
Second.
Thank you. Now we'll open it up for conversation. Any questions or comments for Director Gordon regarding this?
Yeah, I have one.
Please, Cindy, go ahead.
On page 6 of the warrants, there's a $15,630 from the Royal Group. Is that prior work they did?
Yes, that's the first set of doors, correct.
Okay, all right. I wasn't sure what the difference meant.
Yep, and those were FY21 funds. So,
Okay.
yeah, so that's being pushed back to FY21. This money will be in the new fiscal year.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? All right, hearing none, we do have a motion on the floor. So all those in favor of awarding the bid as described by Director Gordon, please signify by saying aye and raising your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Very good. The motion passes. Thank you. That concludes agenda item number 4. Agenda item number 5 is policies. The policy committee has not met lately, so there are no updates from that committee. Which brings us on to agenda item 6, which is the superintendent's report. Superintendent Culkeen is going to be sharing the floor with Ashley Walker, who is the SU COVID-19 coordinator. Ms. Walker, Superintendent Culkeen, I'll leave it to you as to how you would like to begin this part of the meeting.
I'm just moving the camera so that you can see Ashley. Thank you. First, I want to thank Ashley for coming tonight. She is the SVSU COVID-19 coordinator, and we would not have been able to maneuver through this very difficult time without her work and dedication. How many nights and weekends that I have reached out to her for answers, and she always responds. So I want to publicly thank her, and she continues to do that even throughout the summer. And now, as unbelievably as it is, we have the 3rd school year that's going to be impacted by COVID-19. I don't know how many of you are aware, but the Agency of Education did issue some guidance last week, and particularly on wearing masks. And we have to make a decision about, are we going to require masks? Because the state of emergency is over, they can't issue an executive order to require that we wear them. So it is, I want to get the term correct. They're no longer required, but it's not strongly recommended. Ashley, what's the term I'm looking for?
Basically asking for universal masking for the first 10 days of school.
But Masks, here's the phrase that I was going. Masks should be required. That's how it's written in the guidance, that they should be. They're not instructions that we have, but what, I'm gonna let Ashley speak a minute and be quiet, but I'll be quiet, but I think that we're gonna be starting school. My recommendation would be that we wear masks as we see, because the guidance is, I'm gonna be quiet and I'll let you explain the guidance, all right? So that's what I asked you to come here for, so go ahead.
So basically what they've said to us is they're recommending we do universal masking for all staff and students for the first 10 days of school. And that's basically just to get our feet wet to see what population of our eligible students are vaccinated. So what they're saying right now is once you reach 80% of eligible students being vaccinated, then those that are vaccinated cannot wear a mask. Unfortunately, elementary schools we know are not able to be vaccinated at this time, so it would really only apply to the middle and high school level if we were to go down that road. But I would recommend, I agree, we should just start the school year with masking, and we should see where things go, you know, after we get into the school year with the Delta variant and other variants that are coming.
It would be my recommendation then at every monthly meeting, we review the guidance and see what's changed, and maybe we can reverse course, but I really don't see how we, and I know that, you know, I've received emails from parents asking me to, you know, please not enforce mask wearing because, you know, for the impact on their particular child, but I'm looking at everyone's health, staff and students, and as Ashley said, they're not even eligible to be vaccinated yet, so
No.
we've gotten this far, I can't see that we would continue to take that risk, so.
I have a
just
question.
for clarity, is the recommendation for the elementary schools to continue beyond the 10 days? Because there
Yes.
won't be an 80%.
Yes,
Yes.
Yes.
I would recommend that
Just wanted to
we,
make sure I heard that clearly.
and we'll revisit it again at your September board meeting.
And I have a question. Is that when they're outside too, like recess?
No,
No.
there's no mask
No,
required for
outside.
outside.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
strictly be indoors because there's not going to be physical distancing put into place this year. So really our mitigating circumstances are mask wearing, staying home when sick.
Yeah.
You know, those are really going to be the big
Still
things that we're going to
sanitation,
do. Hand
yeah.
washing, contact tracing, but
This-
without the physical distancing, the mask wearing is really important at this point.
And if they continued the physical distancing, we would not be able to reopen school. We'd be back on the alternate schedule and all that. So we are planning to open school 5 days a week, go back to regular hours, and have our students in school learning. But Susan, that's a great point. No mask when they're outside. They can take them off to eat. So the cafeteria operations can go back, and they're also strictly wearing them on the school bus.
Yes, yep.
I
So,
was going to say, was school bus
And,
mandatory? Public transportation
School bus is mandatory.
yep,
Public
mandatory, yep.
transportation,
And for instructional purposes, I think I read the memo, you can take them off, so if a teacher needed to take it off,
Yes.
they could take it off for instructional purposes only.
Yep.
If I'm correct there.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
And would that go to the kids as well, or is that something you have to discuss more about?
That would be on an individual basis,
Yeah.
I feel like, because there are some kids who may not qualify. They may have a doctor's note that says that they can't wear a mask, but that's very few and far between if that would ever happen. We had none of that in the last school year. None of our
Yeah.
kids qualified for that.
So just to restate, we're looking at masks to start the school year, at least for the first month of September.
Yeah.
We'll revisit in October.
Yeah.
Mandatory on the bus, they don't need them outside, and right now there's no social distance, even though CDC recommends 3 feet.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the state can waive that until less numbers
Yeah.
get worse, or
Yes.
significant, I guess is
Yep.
the term.
Unless the AOE give us further guidance that
Right.
says.
Okay.
they're
And that's for
recommending it.
everybody.
Masks
Yes,
for everybody,
everyone,
yes.
staff and students, yes.
Staff and students.
So Superintendent Culkeen, what is required from this board
Scott has a message.
to make this a final decision?
Scott had his hand up. I know you can't see her. Yep, go ahead.
I just wanted to ask if there was any movement or discussion from an SU perspective on requiring vaccinations for faculty and staff.
So that is one other thing that Ashley is here to talk about, and whether we can actually require that. So, do
Yes.
you want to continue with masks, or do you want to talk?
Let's do masks first, then we'll do vaccines.
Okay,
That's
all
the
right.
question.
All right. It is on the agenda, Scott. That's one of the things she's been.
They are closely related, so
Yeah.
I apologize for.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
with
what
regard-
I'd ask is if the board would support the recommendation from the COVID-19 coordinator and the superintendent that we begin school with students and staff wearing masks.
Yes, so board, you've heard Ms. Walker and Superintendent Culkeen's outline, so I would entertain a motion to support that recommendation as we've just heard.
I'll make the motion, recommend it.
I'll second.
Second.
Okay, very good. We have a first and second. Any further discussion on that part of the recommendation, on the masks? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor of the recommendation, of supporting the recommendation, please signify by saying aye and raising your hand.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, very good. The motion passes. Thank you.
And
Let's.
And the plan, just 1 second, Chris, is we'll revisit in September or October.
I think that we probably should at least briefly touch on this at every board meeting going forward throughout the fall. To see
agree.
whatever update is changed.
And I would extend that even to include, in the odd occasion when we have to call special meetings, I think whenever this board is gathered, we should be discussing COVID-19 and what the current state of the scientific knowledge is at that point. So we've covered masks. If we need to go back to anything related to masks, we can in a moment. Scott, you had raised the question about vaccination of staff. And I'd like to hear what central office directors and superintendent could say to us about that, please.
I mean, vaccinations, right now, there is no requirement of vaccinations for anybody. Nobody's required to get it by their job.
Yeah.
They're just starting now in some hospitals requiring the vaccination for staff members, but that's pretty common because they also require everybody to get the flu shot too, because you're working with that population. But there's been nothing that we have gotten that says that we can require anybody to get it. And they have to voluntarily provide that information at this point, right now.
And what the instruction I received is that, we can ask somebody whether they've been vaccinated. They don't have to answer us. And if they don't respond, we're supposed to record that as a no, that they're not vaccinated. And that will impact us getting to that 80% of when we could then remove the mask mandate.
But the 80% really only applies right now to eligible students. It does
Right.
not apply to staff members. So it's really only talking about the kids, because that's why we're asking staff members who are vaccinated to still wear a mask, because the kids are not vaccinated yet. So that's really, it's the staff piece only plays in if they are vaccinated. When we reach the 80%, they will be able to be without a mask on at that point in time. As for students, we can look at their vaccination records. The nurses all have access to that through the Vermont vaccination record. So we can see who has and has not been vaccinated. So we can look into that for a numbers piece. Most families provide us with that information readily. We don't usually have to look ourselves.
And Scott, I have asked our attorney for an advisory on whether we could require vaccinations and what leeway we have. Remember, we're also in a unionized environment where we may have to negotiate that. If that was a direction that we wanted to go to require everyone to be vaccinated, it would most likely have to be negotiated.
I think that work would be good to do.
Yeah. So Deanna with the SVSU attorney is giving me an advisory on that because that question has come up with all boards.
I met on this today with a medical professional, and we're seeing it with more and more companies. And one of the reasons why we're seeing it with more and more companies, large companies, is that it's starting to creep up where if people are sick or become sick on the job with COVID, it starts to be a workman's comp potential claim. And this is new, it's just starting to happen. And they're putting the burden back on the employer, saying you didn't do everything possible to keep me safe. And so if one of the things that can be done to keep an employee safe is to require the vaccinations, then that's why you're seeing that some of these larger companies going down that route is the risk is too great. And so layer that in with students and kids in a building who can't be vaccinated yet, it's something we have to be very, very, we have to pay a lot of attention to quickly.
And Superintendent Culkeen, it's also my understanding that potentially this board's ability or the SU's ability to mandate the vaccination of its employees may change when one or more of the vaccines move from the emergency approval status that they have right now into whatever that higher level of FDA approval.
That is my understanding too, yeah.
So again, I think this will be another thing that we should be revisiting on a regular basis, so that this board can stay apprised of the status of vaccination approvals, so that we can then. I am of the opinion that every employee of the SU, as a person who's interfacing with vulnerable children, needs to be vaccinated. And as soon as we can mandate that out of our staff, the happier that I will be, and more reassured I will be in our efforts to keep our kids safe.
I agree.
So we've covered
Thank you,
masks.
Chris.
Can I ask one question? As far as I know,
Sure.
they talked about vaccine clinics in schools. I thought I read a report on that somewhere. Is that something that we're looking at least in the middle and high school level? I know, or potentially elementary for some sixth graders.
Yeah, so vaccinations are available 7 days a week in the community through the hospital, but they are looking at setting up some vaccination clinics in schools. Superintendent and I have been getting emails from the AOE to start setting those up. They were looking at doing one at Molly Stark, but we've both said that location wouldn't be the best because it's not the population that you're looking to vaccinate. And I think they were more looking at it from a geographical standpoint, centralized in the community, easy to get to for some places. So yeah, they are looking at that, but the hard thing is if we do a vaccination clinic during school hours, that makes it really hard because they want anybody from the community to be able to join them, and that becomes a safety concern with kids in the building. So we've kind of had to weigh that option in doing that with them.
And in the monthly memo that we send out, can we make a reference to where they can get the vaccine? Because I know the hospital
Katie West has all that. We just
Right.
updated the website with all that information.
Yeah.
And the hospital's just finished up the SBC gym again. They
Yep.
just renovated it, so
Yep.
there's going to be more mass vaccination clinics through there, I believe, too.
Okay.
So there's plenty of vaccine available, and doctors' offices have it too for kids.
And I have a question. If teenagers are under 18, can they get vaccinated if they show up without a parent's
No.
permission?
No.
I didn't think
Parents
so.
have to sign a waiver to have their child vaccinated.
Okay, that's
And
what I
we do run
thought.
into that. We do have students who want to be vaccinated and their parents do not want them to be vaccinated. So
Yeah.
that's a tough road to go up down. But they
Okay.
do need parent consent, yes.
So any further questions or discussion about vaccinations as we're discussing our response?
I will
Okay,
I will continue to pursue that with, I think I have pretty clear guidance from the board on their feeling on that, so.
And the last question that I have regarding our COVID-19 response, do we have a plan in place to facilitate our elementary school students washing their hands throughout the day?
Yes.
I mean, we're aware that hand washing is part of the mitigation efforts. It's hard to count on little kids to do that themselves. So what is our plan to help bring that along and facilitate that throughout the day?
Yeah, so I mean, we did a lot of hand washing last year. We had the hand sanitizer, we have so much of that to go around. So kids wash their hands when they enter the building. They are familiar with washing them throughout the day, before they eat lunch, after they eat lunch. So I think COVID has helped us instill that in kids, so now they're so used to it, it's become a habit. So at least from the nurse's standpoint, we're still gonna have everything set up like we did last year. Hand sanitizer when they come in, greeting kids at the door, wash your hands, have a good day, that sort of thing that we did all of last year. That's still the plan in my mind for this year.
I think the only few changes, and we won't be taking temperature at the
Right.
door. There's going to be
Screen
one
people.
less isolation room at each
Yeah.
building, following with that, guys. There still needs to be an isolation room, and contact tracing is still important. So that we can, if there's an outbreak, then we can minimize it and contain it. But so it'll look very similar to last year, other than the physical distance piece and being able to take your mask off outside and be able to take your mask off to eat, and being able to use the cafeteria again for what it was intended to be, and they're not grabbing a bag of lunch and going off and eating in their room. So.
And we've been instructed to follow the same algorithm that we followed last year from the American Academy of Pediatrics. So we have an algorithm to use based on symptomology of how long kids have to be out if they need a COVID test. So we're following that same algorithm this year. The AOE has said we will continue to follow that.
Quick question too about, on top of that. As far as quarantine, like if a kid in classroom A gets tested positive, are we looking at having the whole class go out for a week
Yeah, and close contact would be the same as it has been, so within 6 feet for 15 minutes or more. So most of your elementary school kids would qualify at that because they stay in the same classroom all day. So they would have to isolate for the 7 days, get a test.
And I mean, I guess it's the follow-up, which since there's no more COVID money for parents and you take time off to take care of their kids, I mean, how is it gonna work for working parents with 2 working parents and no family members? I mean, because you're potentially looking at parents losing jobs if they can't go to work, if they don't have vacation time. I mean, so we're still going to send the kids home for a week?
That's still,
Yeah.
we still follow the CDC.
And it's not just why don't you talk to me about the prospect when we get a COVID positive case and then how we do the contact tracing and where it goes from there?
Yeah, so basically when we usually hear from a parent that their student is positive, and then we look at that classroom, any group of kids that are together for 4 hours or more, even if they were 6 feet apart, were considered close contacts. So they did pods. So a classroom is a pod. So you have to isolate for 7 days from your last exposure. And for most of the kids, honestly, by the time we found out, they were already 3 or 4 days into that 7-day time. So for most of them, it was only 3 or 4 days that they had to isolate. They get a test. If their test is negative and they have no symptoms, they can return to school. If they choose not to test, then they're out for 14 days. Vermont still is using the 14-day rule, even though some states have gone to a less rule. Vermont is still, as far as we know, they have not changed anything with that guidance.
So it's still a test at 7 days, if you don't test, it's 14 days?
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
And then one more thing about...
And let's be clear, that's the current
That's the
guidance.
current
They
guidance.
have told us that there may be some
Right.
changes coming.
And as far as music, and whether chorus and instruments, have we made a decision on?
On Thursday, the Secretary of Education said guidance on music is coming.
Okay.
We don't have that guidance.
So right now, it's still as last year? Okay. I think that's it.
We had a superintendent's meeting Thursday, and there was lots of questions to the Agency of Education, Secretary of Education, and that we received the guidance first, and then that generated more questions because everyone wants more specifics, such as what you're asking. And the sport guidance is coming from not from the Agency of Education, but from BPA. Okay. So I think it's just like the masks. I think this becomes a regular agenda item going forward, and we'll just keep updating and see what changes and what we have to adjust.
Great. Do any other board members have any questions of Ms. Walker or Superintendent Culkeen regarding our COVID-19?
Yeah, I do, it's Shayla. Just had a question. I know that this probably doesn't apply to the elementary schools because just the, nature of the classrooms, but when we talk about the pods, are the other schools still going to be required to be with the same kids all day? Or when we say we're going back to a normal schedule, are we talking going back to the way it was pre-COVID?
I'm saying that we are planning and talking with middle and high school of changing classes like we used to. And you change every block, you interact with other kids. And if anything, that would help us because it would limit the amount of time that kids are with, so they wouldn't be in that 4-hour block. Whereas last year we were kind of locked into the 4-hour block because we didn't move kids because that's what we were told to do. So I think it will benefit us in the long term.
Thank you.
All right, is that it for COVID? I'll go to the second part of my report, or are there anything else? Okay. All right, to dismiss Ashley, I'd let her be.
No.
Do you want any further follow-up questions, or can we let her go home?
No.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
For your time.
Thank you, Ashley.
The other thing I had on the superintendent's report is Woodford principal update. As you know, Principal Sandy Foster retired at the end of last school year, which gave us an opportunity to think differently of how we were going to fill that school, administer that school. One of the problems that we had is she was a part-time teacher, part-time principal. When we merged as one, then teachers from Woodford, which were not in the union before, are now in the union, and you should not have a union member. Actually, you're not supposed to have a union member who is also a supervisor that can't do evaluations of their own members. So that wasn't, we kind of skirted along and had not addressed the issue until this point. once we have the opportunity to make a change. So the recommendation I'm making to the board is twofold. Teacher at Woodford, Melissa Chansey. I always mix her up with another Melissa. I would like to designate her, and let me get the term correct. I would like to make her the Woodford School Supervisor, and this would be a stipend position. And then we posted with the Principals Association here in our district for someone to serve as Principal of Record of Woodford Elementary School, and that posting closed today. And my recommendation is that Principal Jeff Johnson from Shaftesbury, and he has agreed that, he did indicate that he would like to do this, and he and Melissa know each other, and I think they can work well together. How this would work is day-to-day operations. Melissa's in the building, she's the one that unlocks the door, locks the door at night, and takes parent inquiries. But if there's something that's requiring a principal, then Jeff would be available, and they would meet, whether it's Zoom or physically. I think, we had other applicants for it, but Jeff has a number of years of experience as a principal, so I think that he's learned that flexibility, that he can make himself available to Melissa when she's needed. And this board, for the first time, added a vice principal to be shared between Pownell and Shaftesbury, so I think that, in an emergency, he could leave the building and be there if needed. So would be revenue neutral. The stipends that they would both receive would come from the differential in salary from what the principal made and what the teacher position that we're filling there, because we are bringing a teacher back to Woodford Elementary. So I would ask board to approve Jeff Johnson as Principal of Record of Woodford Elementary School and Melissa Chansey as Woodford School Supervisor.
So move.
All right.
Second it.
Claire. Did we have a first and a second?
Yes.
Dick France first and Susan Hogue second.
Very good. Any discussion or questions on the motion? Yes, Dick, go ahead, please.
Just to say that there's a lot of thoughtful consideration that went in on Jim's part and how to put this together, and it sounds like a sound way to resolve an issue. So, thank you.
I don't think you could ask for somebody more loyal to the school than Melissa. And Scott had his hand up too, Chris.
Yeah, the one question that I had is if Melissa needs to step out of classroom duties to do more on the side of the administration,
Yeah.
Is there a person that steps into that role, and is there a stipend required for that person?
No, there wouldn't be someone required. This is what's so unique about Woodford Elementary. When I visit there, I'm continue to be amazed at how much crossover there is between what individual teachers are. If she had to leave, like I said, we required her to come to a meeting, I think that there could be enough coverage for her. And that's why we're replacing the principal/teacher position with a full-time teacher. So we did an internal transfer from Molly Stark back up to Woodford to fill that position. So I think there's enough personnel there for that to be there. And like I said, the uniqueness, Dick knows this better than me. And Susan, the first time I ever went to Woodford years ago, and like the differential teaching that's taking place in that building. Here's one teacher working with, she's got some first grade students here, and she's got some second grade students over there. It looks to the uninitiated as a little confusing and chaotic, but the more time you spend there, you see how it all flows together. So they work. It's very the uniqueness of it for some of our other elementary schools is a lot of what goes on in there isn't contained just in that classroom. So there's enough crossover that people would cover. But if it turns out otherwise, I'll be back to you, but I don't think it's necessary at this time.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any further discussion on the superintendent's proposition? All right, so we do have a motion on the floor. All those in favor of approving the superintendent's proposition regarding the leadership of Woodford, please signify by saying aye and raising your hand.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, very good. The motion passes. So congratulations to Melissa and thank you to Jeff. And I agree with the plan. I think it sounds like it's like everyone will be in good hands for sure.
Yeah.
So thank you for that.
And the only thing I want to tell you about is I just finished a 2-day training retreat with all administrators. We had the SVSU attorney giving them legal updates. We rolled out the new evaluation system for teachers, the administrators, and our equity statement, development of the equity statement for the SVSU, and unrolling equity is going to be a feature of this school year for all the SU, including a speaker series that's being put together by our equity coordinator and our public information coordinator on topics related to equity. So that was, you'll be hearing more of that as we go forward. We brought it out to the administrators today. So 2 days of training and a little team building activity too. So you should be proud of your administrators. They all participated willingly, and maybe not to every activity, but they were there. And it's we do this every summer, except for last summer. Last summer we did not get together for an administrative retreat because of COVID. So it's amazing how many new people were in the room who had only seen each other. You know, new administrators who were hired last year or even now this year, but had not met anyone face to face yet. So that was interesting 2 days. We're inching ready for the start of school. So we'll hopefully at the next board meeting, you have a couple of new administrators. Maybe we'll be meeting physically. I don't know where we're going for our next meeting, whether we still do the hybrid, but at some point we'll get the new administrators physically in a room so you can meet them. And that's it.
Great. Well, I think we all look forward to that for sure.
Scott has his hand up again.
Yes, please, Scott, go ahead.
Sorry, I just wanted to you bring up a good point. We talked about the 5 o'clock meeting spot.
Yeah.
If we will have a 5 o'clock meeting spot, I need to put in a request that Zoom stays a function of that.
Yeah.
Because
So
it will really hurt.
And the board probably should discuss this too. The only way that we can do hybrid meetings is in this location, right? I mean, you could do it anywhere, but people would have to call in from the phone. So we could, there's no reason why we can't continue here at central office and you can join by Zoom or by physically, because we upgraded this room with the monitor, the remote camera, new speaker, and microphone system, so it works well. If we go back to the elementary schools, the only thing that's really going to work is in-person meetings. So under Vermont law, anyone can always enter a meeting electronically, but usually that's been by somebody has called into a meeting, and you've experienced how that isn't all that. So maybe for our September meeting, maybe we stay in the hybrid model. I don't know what the chair feels about that. I know we talked about jumping up earlier, but as we see where this variant of the COVID-19 is accelerating, maybe we stay in this model for at least another month. But maybe we should.
My perspective would be to take that month by month as well, especially with what Delta's doing.
So what would be the wish of the board for the next month's meeting? Should we plan to do it in this format, or I wait for you guys?
So I think we should plan to do it in the format we're doing it right now. Meeting at 5, an online or virtual or phone-in option available to anyone who wants it. And because scheduling meetings is one of those few things that the board can do without having an open meeting, we can all be in a group email and discussing kind of what makes sense for our individual schedules and our comfort levels given COVID moving forward. But for right now, I would be most comfortable sticking with this format for our September meeting.
All right, that's how I'll plan it then. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
So thank you to the superintendent. That brings us to the chair's report, which will be brief. I just want to absolutely welcome all of the new staff we have coming in this year. The FYI on the posted agenda has 7 such new staff members, so certainly welcome to all of them. Welcome to all of our new students and new families who are either entering because it's their turn in kindergarten or are new to the community, so certainly welcome to everyone for that. I just want to give thanks to all of the teachers and paras and staff who I know have been working throughout the summer to get ready for their time in our school buildings this year. That's one of those things you hear about teachers doing all the time, working on their so-called off hours and using their own resources. So just thank you to everyone who's been doing that. And the final piece I just wanted to address in the chair's report is really a request for feedback. We're now a few years into the presence of school resource officers, or what was designed to be school resource officers in our buildings. And a lot has changed in our world. A lot of perspectives on the role of law enforcement in communities, the role of law enforcement in schools, sort of the effectiveness of school resource officers, the use of straight up police officers in lieu of school resource officers. So I'm just hoping that the board members, as well as members of the public, will come prepared to discuss this as an agenda item in September, in our September meeting. We spend a tremendous amount of money on the school resource officer program, and I just think it's the sort of thing, because it's still relatively new, it bears some consideration as we consider our responsibility as a board for how we're going to use our community's resources. So I would ask that folks come prepared for that in September, and if you know of community members who have strong feelings or have opinions to share or experiences to share, please invite them to participate in next month's meeting. So moving on, that brings us to agenda item 8, which is the FYI, the student enrollment data. We didn't have any because there was no one enrolled attending in the summertime. The budget status report was posted. What's that? Oh, okay. And then we have the nomination forms that were earlier signed by the chair, which are all listed there. So Haley Francescone, John Callender, Amanda Rinaldi, Tamara Nixon, Mary Monick, Lisa Halkias, and Darcy Webb. And now that brings us to our final agenda item, and I would entertain a motion to put us into executive session pursuant to 1 VSA subsection 313 A1E and F, which is to discuss probable civil litigation and to get some advice from our attorney. And I would also say that I do not anticipate taking any business after this executive session. So anyone who wants to go home or tune out can do so as soon as we enter into executive session. So could I have a motion to that effect, please?
Move to enter executive session as stated.
Second.
Thank you very much. Any discussion on entering into executive session? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor of moving into executive session, please signify by saying aye and raising your hand.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, very good. So